This week on the agenda, as the United Nations marks its 80th anniversary, we're here in Madrid to speak to a former president of the General Assembly, Maria Fernanda Espinosa. The United Nations is now celebrating its 80th anniversary. Set up in the wake of the Second World War, it was designed to maintain peace across the globe, fostering friendly relations between nations. 8 decades on, though, with the world a markedly different place, what does the organisation need to do to maintain its position at the heart of 21st century geopolitics? I've come to Madrid to speak to Maria Fernanda Espinosa, who served as the president of the 73rd General Assembly, one of only 5 women in history to have held that position. 80 years ago, coming out of the Second World War, the UN had a clear purpose. And I think China's Premier Li Qiang put it really well when he gave his address at the General Assembly. And he said it was created upon the ideal of a world free of war. What's its role now?
Well, first of all, thank you, Juliet. And of course, we are celebrating 80 years of history, 80 years of building a wealth of international law, a wealth of rules and regulations that make the world a better place, but a whole deployment of humanitarian work, of being on the ground with the peoples and communities that are in need, etc. And the truth, yes, the phrase of the Charter that says to protect humanity from the scourge of war, meaning we want never again after the Second World War. And this was so right because the mandate, the job description of the UN was to preserve humanity from war and violence. And today we are experiencing more than 100 armed conflicts. The ones that make the headlines, the Middle East or Ukraine, but Sudan and Yemen, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and many conflicts. My own continent of Latin America is suffering deeply because of organized crime, etc. And I think that the UN needs to do more and better. The world of 1945, it's a different world today, and the institution needs to adapt, to be modernized, retooled, to be more effective.
As you say, that the world is a very different place now. Do you think then, because the institutions run pretty much the same, do you think maybe the UN is out of sync with current realities?
I would say yes, definitely yes. Not only the world is a different place, the world is a multipolar world. The geopolitics of power have dramatically changed. There are new actors in the international scene. When the Charter was signed, 51 countries signed the UN Charter. After the decolonization processes, we have now 193 member states at the UN. The world has dramatically changed. The challenges have also changed, from issues of cybersecurity to the use of artificial intelligence and new technologies, pandemics, climate change. They were not part of the narrative 80 years ago, which means that the structures need to adapt to the current realities, to the current geopolitics, have leaner, more effective, more accountable institutional structures, and that's what is needed. 80 years have passed, and it is a moment of now or never for the UN. From budgets to the structures, to a profound mandate review under the leadership of member states. The UN has around 40,000 mandates since its creation, and now it is time to mainstream, to prioritize, to know what continues to be relevant and how to adjust and adapt to the new times.
It sounds like you're talking about a necessary reinvention of the United Nations to be fit for modern times and also to be future ready. You've listed a few things there that you think need to be tackled as, as top of your list. But do you think that the UN membership is really ready to embrace the opportunity or is the organisation too stuck in the past?
I would say that we hear and see that the majority of member states do not want to keep the status quo. There is disappointment about the UN, there is frustration about the UN, there is an issue of legitimacy, of trust. So I would say that the larger majority of the organization is ready for transformation. It's saying yes, transform or die in a way. And I think that we are living this moment of opportunity, I would say of cautious optimism that things should change and must change. Sometimes we think institutions are self-operating machines. They are human creations. The UN is a human creation. Therefore, the transformation of the organization has to be human-made. And of course, for that we need leadership, we need co-responsibility, we need a very active role of member states. I would say that the majority of them really want to see the organization deliver better, be more accountable, be more people-centered, be more relevant for the times we live in today.
A recent article from the International Crisis Group said the dominant emotion at the UN in 2025 has been self-pity. I wonder if that's how you'd characterise it, because you talk about a lack of trust there in being a motivation for change. But what about that feeling of feeling sorry for themselves?
Well, this issue of self-pity is a little, leads you to paralysis or indifference. And just self-inflicted, oh yes, we're not doing well, yes, we lack resources. I think it's not constructive. And what I heard during the last high-level week of the General Assembly, I heard the opposite. I heard constructive criticism. I heard awareness that things needed to improve. I heard the need for more UN, better UN, a modern UN, perhaps a slimmer UN, more impact with less resources. I heard strong calls for the need to mainstream the work, to prioritize better. And that goes from budgets to structures, to the role of specialized agencies and programs at the UN, the agencies of the UN, but also goes to decentralize its operations, being more ready to be demand-driven. And I think that sometimes we think that more bureaucracy, more impact, and it doesn't go, especially in modern times. So not self-pity, but I think a creative self-assessment that things need to transform and change. I heard strong calls for that. So no paralysis, but action and transformation, opportunity.
And what about the Security Council? Do you think that needs to change in terms of its makeup, in terms of veto power, in terms of the balance?
The Security Council reform has been an ongoing process in the organization. I've been connected to the UN for more than 25 years as ambassador, as president of the General Assembly, ambassador in New York and Geneva. And we always hear this word, magic word, reform. But now it's a different moment. It's transform, reform, landing in very concrete actions. I would say variable geometry of reform. One of the pieces of the puzzles, of course, of the puzzle is the Security Council reform. And immediately when people think about Security Council reform, they think expansion of the members and veto. But the Security Council is wider and bigger. I think that there is agreement that there is a need for reform, but to look and reassess the working methods of the Security Council, to look and reassess the accountability, the huge implementation gap of the decisions of the Security Council, to focus the security agenda more on prevention and peace building connected to development than arriving too little too late when things happen afterwards. So there are many things. and also to understand the Security Council in the context and the balance of power with the other key organs of the organization. The General Assembly, the ECOSOC, the Economic and Social Council of the UN, the International Court of Justice, and the Security Council as a whole. The whole architecture needs to be reformed, not only the Security Council.
So you're talking about being more proactive and maybe less reactive when it comes to the role of the United Nations, but you've also called for a more inclusive and networked multilateralism. So tell me why you think that is so important and how that's going to work.
Well, the reform, of course, has to be under the leadership of the member states, of course. But they need the guidance, the technical advice of the Secretariat, of the Secretary General of the UN, but it also needs to listen to the people on the ground. It also needs to understand what the real needs are. Multilateralism is only effective when it delivers for people, especially for the people in need. When we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, 35% of them are in the right track to be complied with. 18% are backtracking and in regression. So it's not looking good. So I would say that it is a process that requires the voices, that requires the agency of more actors that did not exist in 1945 in the way they exist today. But a people center based on listening, based on understanding the needs of the ground is what we need. And a strong leadership and a strong push of the member states with I would say, the technical advice and the wisdom that comes from the executive body of the organization, which is the Secretariat and the Secretary General.
Do you worry that unilateralism is on the rise? I mean, especially given the views of the latest occupant of the White House in his address, his recent address to the General Assembly. I wonder what you think is the long-lasting impact of the Trump administration on the future of the United Nations?
Well, what I heard, and I was sitting there at the General Assembly Hall, what I heard is we want more UN, not less. We want a better UN and not less. We want the UN to be present, to be strong, to deliver better. And that's the call I heard, and I think that's what the world needs. And it was I don't know how many leaders. I think most of the 140-something that spoke during the high-level week, I think the common denominator was, yes, we want the UN. We need the UN. We need a multilateral system that delivers, but delivers for the world of today, that is able to be fit for purpose, that reinvents itself. That's basically what we heard. And of course, people are worried because of the financial crisis of the organization, but a budget of an organization, it's not arithmetics. It's the expression of the political will. And I think that the way you increase political will and commitment with regard to the organization is by raising the bar in terms of trust, in terms of effectiveness, in terms of accountability. That's where you start, receiving the resources you need.
Set up in the wake of the Second World War, the key driver of the United Nations has always been to try and keep global peace. But you gave a long list of conflicts that are raging around the world, from Ukraine to Gaza, to Yemen, to Sudan, to name just a few. How can the UN do peacekeeping better?
Well, peacekeeping is when it's already too late. No, the peacekeeping operations arrive to a place that is already in conflict, and they need. There is a need for appeasement. No, and I would say one of the big debts and flaws of the organization is really double down on the preventive agenda. Have a very nimble yet powerful preventive diplomacy units that can do oversight, assessments, good analytics, good forensics, and have a early warning systems and red lights to prevent conflicts to happen. Already Benjamin Franklin said, you know, 1 ounce in prevention is worth a pound of response. And that is not only in terms of the resources that are needed, but the impact in human lives, the impacts in the future, in the development of these peoples that are hurt by a conflict. And you say peacekeeping. Peacekeeping needs a full reinvention. Peacekeeping should be connected to the now active and empowered regional organizations. And I think, of course, the UN should continue to have a role of oversight, a role of being not only a witness, but a facilitator, a mediator, a bridge builder. No, but the operations of the ground have shown not to be effective.
None of the things that we're talking about come for free. So I wonder how much you think cost really fits in to all of this. You know, you've said we're in a time of profound structural change within the institution, linked in part to financial challenges. The UN, like so much of the rest of the world, is under pressure to tighten its belt. So how can it do that without potentially costing lives?
I think it's very important to think, of course, there is an emergency, an urgency, no, to go through a streamlining and cost-cutting and making the operation smaller, but also, you know, the transaction costs of the organizations are very high. If you look at important yet small things, for example, the procurement systems of the UN, how to make them better, and in how to do more with less. And do more with less is about impact, it is about efficiency, it is about transparency in the use of resources. When I speak about a new financing compact, I look at the budget of the UN, where more than 60% of its budget comes from voluntary contributions that are earmarked for certain things and priorities by certain member states, and less than 40% on assessed contributions. We know that there are billions in arrears, both in the central budget of the UN, but also in peacekeeping operations. Countries are not paying their dues on time, but at the same time, the highest figures in the UN budget come from voluntary contributions. So we need to really have predictable resources, mechanisms to fund the operation of the organization in a way that doesn't depend on changes in priorities by member states or in putting a lot of their energy in earmarking issues that are the priority of one country or another. We really need a solid, predictable, a sustainable budget in the long run. And this is something that needs to happen extremely soon, because we are experiencing right now a liquidity crisis that is not a financial crisis, it is a political crisis of the organization.
One thing that's very different from 80 years ago is this global focus on economic resilience, sustainability, and climate change. This is something that Li Qiang highlighted in his speech at the General Assembly. How can the UN make sure that the whole world is working towards sustainable development goals?
I mentioned before that humanity has not done great with the sustainable development goals. I think it's a very good roadmap. It's a very good direction of travel for the world on sustainable development. But it so happens that we are in the right track. As I mentioned, 35% of them, 18% of sustainable development goals are going backwards. The financing needs to deliver on the sustainable development goals go up to $5 trillion per year for developing countries. The money is not there, not because the money does not exist. There are resources out there, but the priorities are not the right priorities. And here, I think for the world to be free of fear and free from want and more secure and with a life with dignity, basically what we need is to go back to the basics. Invest in education, in health, on infrastructure, and on peace. And peace is not the absence of war. It's a life with dignity and free from want, as I mentioned. So in here, I think that we need to recognize the vision of China when they come with these new 4 global initiatives. Not only the global initiative on peace and security, but the global initiative on development, and more recently the global initiative on global governance. These are the sort of, and I really like the global initiative on civilization, because I think that cultural coexistence, getting to know different cultures, religions, it only enriches not only the understanding, but the wealth of humanity lies on that. So when we talk about a global initiative on development, it means that combating and eradicating extreme poverty, making sure that people have a life with dignity, safe jobs, water and sanitation, electricity, investing in renewable energy. It's really a shared responsibility that needs collective action. And that needs solidarity, cooperation, and that's exactly what these global initiatives are about.
As one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, China plays a crucial role in shaping international law, in resolutions and responses to global conflicts. How do you see the role of China evolving at the United Nations?
Well, first of all, we have to say that when China became a full member of the United Nations in 1971, that was a landmark, a very important moment in the configuration of the power structure within the international community and the United Nations. The establishment of this large community of countries now called of the Global South, but just look at the configuration of the G77 plus China, which is the biggest group in the UN. You have right there 134 countries of the Global South, not only being the recipients of cooperation and solidarity, but being agents of change, being the engine of sustainable development. And here I think that China has understood its historical role since 1971 with the 4 initiatives that I mentioned. But it has also exercised leadership, but a leadership that is not based on imposition, but in working together with a community of nations that are responsible for building a multilateral system that leaves no one behind, that delivers for all, that looks at common interest, at the value of international cooperation, at a human-centered, effective multilateral system. So I see, we heard the speech of the Premier of China in New York, and it's a call for more and better multilateralism, but also a strong commitment to make the UN be more fit for purpose, more efficient, more effective, more transparent, and that is really gives us hope.
Where do you see the rise of the Global South impacting the role of the United Nations?
When I mention the G77 plus China group, this is the powerhouse. Having been the president of the UN General Assembly, I can tell you, these are not the poor countries of the Global South asking for help. This is actually the powerhouse where the engine, the movement, the creativity, the innovation of the multilateral system takes place. So it is truly about agency, about ownership, and basically that's where most of the current international law comes from. So after the decolonization processes, in the 50s and the 60s, what we have is a very diverse, rich international community where I see that these divides between East and West, North and South are blurred today. And I think that what we are seeing is a redistribution of power. It is new architectures, it is new configurations, and it is the so-called global South that I also think that the global majority is something that it's an expression that I like. This global South have, I would say, a decisive role. If you look even at the demographics, where are the majority of the people living? If you look at the geographies, if you look at the wealth of resources, where is the fresh water, where is the biodiversity of the world, where are the rare minerals in this planet? No? So the issue of wealth, of capacity, of innovation, of power to decide, I think we need to start rethinking the geographies in a way and give credit to the power, the force of the so-called global South and the so-called also developing countries. And I don't want to idealize these 134 countries. They also face tremendous challenges. If you look at foreign debt, if you look at shrinking fiscal spaces and policy spaces, if you look at poverty, if you look, I mean, there are many challenges there. But there is agency, and there is creativity, and there is co-responsibility.
Do you think it makes a difference if a woman is presiding over things? I mean, you were only the fourth female president of the General Assembly, and Germany's Annalena Baerbock is only the fifth. There's not yet been a female Secretary General, although elections are in 2026. What do you think?
Well, I would say that the world is ready, I think, for a Madam Secretary General. After 8 years, there are many supporters of that idea. When you look at precisely, we were speaking about the importance of the power of the General Assembly. In 80 years, only 5 women. Something is not right there, even though I'm very happy that we have yet another woman presiding the General Assembly. 5 is not enough. I think that the world is prepared that for the first time to have a female leading the Secretariat of the UN. But sometimes we think, yes, because it's historical justice, it's about time. But I think that with having a woman is not enough. It is also about quality. It is about leadership styles. It is about transformations that are needed in the UN that we have extensively discussed about the transformations that the UN needs. And I think that if we need a change in leadership, why not to have a Madam Secretary General for the first time?
How optimistic are you for the future of the United Nations?
I think that optimism without transformation and without profound reform is naive. So I am on the side of a cautious optimism because I give agency and power to the people that created the UN 80 years ago and now have the opportunity to transform the UN. So it is not a optimism with naivety, is optimism with the power to transform the organization that serves and it has to serve so many people and protect we the peoples from the scourge of war.
Maria Fernanda Espinosa, thank you very much.
Thank you, Juliet. It's been a pleasure.
You can watch every episode of The Agenda in full on CGTN Europe's YouTube channel. And for exclusive extra content from me, my guests and the rest of the team, don't forget to check out @The Agenda Show on TikTok. Coming up on a future agenda, a new plan. We'll examine what the next 5 years might really mean for China. But for now, from me, Juliet Mann, and from all the Agenda team here in Madrid, goodbye.